Thank you, Senators. And with that, let me open it up to any questions.
Thank you. I'm Julia Ainsley with NBC News. Thanks so much for doing this today. We're also hearing a lot right now about non-citizens voting in places where it's against the law. Do any of you have cases in your states that have been prosecuted because immigrants intentionally broke the law to vote?
Well, there are investigations in South Carolina. Yeah. So right now, we have not, to my knowledge, no one's been charged formally yet. There have been investigations in South Carolina in several jurisdictions. We've had people who are not eligible to vote. There are some discussions about that and looking at how some of these people are able to register who may not be eligible. And this typically happens, we haven't found in South Carolina this happened at a statewide election. Really the push, even for the non-citizen voting, is on school board elections and municipal elections. And that's where we seem to have the fall through the cracks. And if you look at our state constitution, it's a very simple change. I mean, it says every citizen of the state of South Carolina, of the United States of America, have the right to vote. But it sounds innocuous enough. You think, gosh, that means and most people, when you ask that question, say, well, that means only citizens can vote. Unfortunately, what's happened in jurisdictions like California, Vermont, New York, here in Washington even, is they've taken that as a floor, not a ceiling. And so you have this interpretation, well, they can extend the right of suffrage beyond just citizens. And so we're trying to close that loophole where we can really be sure that when any local municipality or school board tries to register somebody who's not a citizen, that's very clearly unconstitutional.
Anybody else?
There are,
Cases in your state that may have been prosecuted?
I will just point out, and I'm no expert on this, but there's a number of states, Georgia, Secretary Raffensperger mentioned he's done a check of the voter rolls. I know in Ohio, the Secretary of State, Frank LaRose, who led the charge there, they passed a citizen-only voting amendment in 2022. He has also done the same thing to look at the voter rolls and try to determine, are there people on those voting rolls who should not be there? I think it's a question of how big a problem is it. Obviously, anybody who votes illegally, that's a problem. But here, we're really dealing much more with, and exclusively with, non-citizens voting legally. And I think that's a decision that the public really has to weigh in on and say, do we want that to be happening? And of course, if the voters decide, as they have every time, that we want only citizens, then there is an enforcement part of that. You do have to follow up and make sure people follow the rules. But we're really at the point of setting those rules clearly.